Here we go again with another video, this time probably the last video of the series. So we were just about to start the world events step of the globalization phase, and what happens in this step is quite interesting. So looking through the sequence of play here, first thing we do is we resolve the pivotal events that have been put into play by the Black Swan event that we just had during an earlier video. That means we now resolve Asia. Let's zoom in into Asia a little bit to see what's going on there. So basically we resolve the pivotal event. So this sort of thematically designates the importance of Asia as the tiger economies, as an economic area. But we resolve all three different types of influence and score them nonetheless, not only the economic. And so what we are looking at here is going through each dimension or each type of influence. So let's start, for instance, with the military influence, and we look for spaces where somebody has control, military control, that is. And control always means you have to look at the so-called stability value of that space. So for instance, for China it's 3, it's highlighted as this brighter square here on the influence track. And so looking at all the 4 spaces of Asia, we see that Asia Pacific, it has got Chinese military influence, but it doesn't equal or exceed the stability value, so there's no control there. But there is in Central Asia, because NATO, you remember the EU did that and increased their military influence there just during the last turn and got rid of the neutral influence there as well, or decreased it by 1 rather, which then means that the NATO does actually have military control in Central Asia, and them being the only power, or well, NATO is not a power, but the only type of influence, military influence that has control in any space in Asia, means that NATO will score in the military dimension. And that means NATO powers, since it's NATO influence, will both gain 1 victory point, going to 6 and 7 respectively. So, and that's obviously bad news for the authoritarians that we are playing in this playthrough. So that was the military sphere. Let's go, for instance, into the political sphere. There the situation is slightly different. So here we've got control in multiple spaces. We've got the Chinese in Asia Pacific, we've got them also in Asia, in South Asia, and we've got the EU over here in Central Asia. But so we are in a tie. We look at next the overall number of levels of influence in that dimension that the tying powers have. Well, clearly the Chinese will win and prevail over the EU overall in the region, so China will score 1 victory point for in the political realm. And lastly, we go into the economic realm, and here we have the US in control in Central Asia and no other control anywhere, so there is not even a tie, so the US will score 1 victory point over there. So overall, the democracies, the non-player sides that are our opponents, are still pulling ahead, while we kind of struggle here a little bit, even though the Chinese have now managed to get also 1 victory point, so that is good. And so we can discard the tiger economies, and this will just simply go completely out of play. It will never return again during this game. So let me drop it somewhere here on the side. So we did that, and the next thing to do during the world events step is to go through the world events cards here on the map. So here's, for instance, the Taliban, and resolve to trigger the effects on these cards for the sake of them, or because they haven't been resolved. Sorry. So to give you an example, Taliban is not resolved because the card is still on the map. And so we look at the red part on the card to see what the effects are. It says other Asia plus T, so it means other Asians, one other Asian subregion, not a home space subregion, will gain 1 level of tension. I mentioned earlier that the maximum level of tension is 2, so South Asia cannot even get 1, so it will have to be Asia Pacific that gets 1. The next event is Central Asia plus white octagon, so that means that the neutral influence there increases, which is good news for us because it prevents NATO and the EU and the US from resolving the Taliban situation. And then finally, the last effect is democracies minus 1 AP agenda point. Agenda points are these markers here that powers earn from doing things such as resolving world events or placing alignments. Only the Russians have agenda points, so no loss possible there for the democracies, the US and the EU. Do we have other world events still on map? We do have the Brexit talks. Here the red effect is the EU will have to lose 1 political or economic agenda point, which they didn't hold any, so no effect. And finally we've got the Venezuela crisis, and there the red part says other Americas plus tension. So here we choose randomly between the Caribbean or Central America, both of which don't have any tension yet. 1 to 3 is Caribbean, otherwise Central America. We roll day 5, so tension is placed into Central America. And the second effect is South America itself will get a neutral influence there. So now we have to go here to the stack of neutral influence markers, and then not markers, octagons, and drop 1 into that space. And this is then all the world events that we have to resolve. And so we move from the world events to a reset step. So, and this is where we discard first of all the neutral events that are occupying the event slots. So we will simply send them away. Here we've got 1, and do we have 1 more here? Yes. And we will next give each power the opportunity to keep any cards that they have on the map. In order to keep it there, they have to pay 1 resource though. So the Russians being at -1, they probably decide not to, so we discard that to the Russian discard pile. There are no other Russian cards. The Chinese, so let's see, I think this card giving us a resource every time there's a political and economic action in Europe is quite useful, so let's decide we keep that and pay 1 resource for it. The other one I will let go, and for the non-players they simply will discard whatever they have. So those are gone. And then we reconstitute the draw deck. So this is as follows: we drop all the 4 check cards in there. We take the remaining unused neutral events, 8 of which are there left, and then we need to top up to 16 so that we can play the second half of the game with the deck that we are now constructing. So we drop all those into the shuffle deck, and then I draw random 4 cards and drop them into the Devilman's draw deck. We've got 16 cards in there. And finally, well, not finally, but as the next step, we've got the world event. So here we can read on the round track, from this point on we've got 6 world events on the map. So let me zoom out. 6 world events should be on the map. We've got 3, so 3 more are drawn. Before that we drop all the cards from the shuffle deck into the world events draw deck, so 17 there, and now we draw 3. Let's see what we get. We place them in the order drawn, and the placement instructions are always on the card itself. Castro succession, Caribbean it says, so this goes into the Caribbean. There's some sort of a succession crisis brewing possibly in the Caribbean. Bin Laden is the next one, and it says place in Asia or Middle East with 2 levels of neutral influence there. So let's first roll the die to see if which region we get. So 1, 2, 3 would be Asia, otherwise Middle East. Rolling the black die, we get the Middle East, and then we choose a random space there. So let's assign die roll values. Levant is 1, 2, Arabian Peninsula 3, 4, and the Gulf States 5 or 6. Rolling the black die again, we get 3 and 4, and that would be Arabian Peninsula, placing a neutral influence there. And lastly, we've got shipping lane piracy, and this one will go into Africa, Americas, or Asia with 1 level of neutral influence. So selecting between those regions, again I roll a die. Africa would be 1 or 2, Americas 3, 4, and Asia 5, 6. So we get, that was the Americas. Americas only has got 1 space that doesn't yet have a world event. It cannot go into a home space, so it has to go in there, and then 2 levels of neutral influence there. And that's us sorted in terms of setting the next period of play up in what comes to world events. There's a small step to adjust the influence levels in spaces where somebody's influence is higher than the space's stability value, which is here in Eastern Europe. So the rule here is you look at the one with more than the stability value of influence, reduce it down to the stability value, and then reduce every other bit of influence equal amount. So these go down by 1. The Russian military influence will stay there though, because no influence can be kicked out during this step. Let me quickly scroll through the map to see if any other space faces action there. No, it doesn't. And then finally, round marker we increase by +1, so we move into the round 5. But this is where I'm going to conclude this example of play. So I hope you've gained some understanding of how the game plays, what are some of the decision points, and for those who are interested in the non-player system, you've hopefully gotten an idea how it works. It's proving to be an interesting game. I think I might continue playing this on my own, because we saw here with the Taliban and the EU and the NATO, EU and the US, having set themselves up for resolving the Taliban, although now the neutrals swooped in to spoil the fun there for them. So it's interesting to see whether they're able to do that. Our power was the Russians that we played. They trail in the VPs, but on the other hand, we are the ones that have been able to accumulate some agenda points. So I have the option during the Russian turn to convert these, or one of them at a time, into VPs. So I have a chance to climb up, but it's quite costly to do those conversions. Here we've got Bin Laden world event for the US to solve, but luckily again the neutrals are there. So a lot of things going on that potentially affect the course of the game and the victory point earnings. Venezuela crisis here, also the US there on the pole position to resolve it, and of course the EU here with Brexit talks. So it looks like the non-players are gonna come hard in the second period, but what's going for us, the authoritarians, is that we've got quite a lot of tension here in different spaces on the map. So when we get the War of Ideas check, we will earn victory points. I'm being a bit too quick here. So basically what will happen is, unless something happens to these tension markers, spaces that are not yet or not already in the authoritarian type of governance. So here, for instance, Asia Pacific is already will shift towards authoritarianism. So for instance, South Asia here would shift. That would cause, or will cause, the War of Ideas track to shift here towards the authoritarian, and then eventually, if it shifts far enough, we will start earning VPs as well. So we've got some VP income coming, at least in the mid to long term, but whether that will be enough is anybody's guess at this moment. But yes, so I will conclude the playthrough here, and thank you for watching the series, and have a good day. Bye.